You're touching upon a really important topic about is not just creating a PMO and understanding the processes and the services, but also understanding the game, the power game that's behind it. I don't mean it in a Machiavellian sort of way, but that's a factor that you have to come. Because I think we talked about this before and as well, is that a lot of PMOs, are passionate in what they do. But the question is, have they aligned their medicine with the patients? Okay. So that's part of it, and are they ready for it? I'll give you an example. My wife, she does street medicine. She's a practicing doctor, and she understands this. When she meets a homeless person, she might not see, or she might assume that this person has serious issues. They might have frostbite. They might have lice. They might have all sorts of other things. But one of the things she's experienced psychologically is that she'll never break through to them if she just says, here, let's take off all your clothes and let's go for the big stuff, because there's no trust. Absolutely. She says, sometimes the best thing that you can do is she says, hey, listen, do you want a cigarette? She doesn't smoke, but she'll offer him a cigarette. That opens the door. Or she'll say, you know what, you're sleeping on the street, you want some earplugs. So it's the easy entry point that she uses. And then when she builds trust, she just hangs out with them. She spends time with them. And then they say, you know what, by the way, I have this thing on my back. Do you mind taking a look at it? So that's an analogy of how I think PMO bosses need to have more understanding. I'll give you one last story because it so ties in. It's a story I've told a couple times. I once consulted for a large telecom company that spent millions rolling out a project management governance model over all of their subsidiaries. Great initiative. And I was impressed. They had a portfolio manager, which I'd never, it was one of the first times I'd seen. They had a PMO and a portfolio manager. And I remember the portfolio manager once came to me. He was kind of a cut and dry kind of guy. He came to me and he was totally frustrated. He says, I just came back from a retreat with the board and I'm totally frustrated. I said, why are you frustrated? He says, because I went up to the CEO, who was a very well-known in the public, very well-known CEO. Very, marketing line and stuff like that. And he went up to him and during the coffee break and he said, Mr. So-and-so, it's me, your portfolio manager. Do you mind if I discuss a couple portfolio issues with you? And you know what he said to him? He kind of did this and said, leave me alone with that operational crap.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot.
And you know what? That's reality. Yeah. I think we have we're passionately in love with our subject matter. We understand it and believe in it, but we have to have patience and understanding that not everybody else is going to agree with us.
Yeah. Because selling all of this is not something that we'll do pushing. People should be open for that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it requests a specific strategy. And what you said is important because, look, I'm a PMO leader. I have to deal with people from IT and people from accounting department. I'm talking about two different types of people. I have to talk with...
Different language.
Absolutely. Operational person and executives. Different kind of people. I have to talk with someone from Austria and someone from Brazil. Different kind of people, right? So we are much more emotional, right? so that's it, And if you just don't recognize this, you don't see the risks of your PMO. And this is the point. Sometimes we miss the risks that we have at our PMO in terms of reaching success. Yeah. This is the point.
Yeah. One of your roles will be to kind of be in touch with the feeling in the market, right? What's going on. And I think we would agree that there's a huge future for PMOs. I think there's still a lot that can be done, a lot of good things, because I think you mentioned this in your presentation yesterday. In our world, in our small world of PMO, which is much bigger than we think, we're always focused on the top tier. People who already embrace our language and our understanding, our vocabulary. It's kind of our own workforce. But the number of companies out there who need a PMO in some form or fashion, who don't know anything about PMI, who don't know anything about about you, and they definitely don't know anything about me. That's the future, and I think once again I think the initiative that you're doing is spot on. I think there's a lot of great things. On the other hand, I see or sense also. I know a lot of companies who've been committed to the PMO concept for 20, maybe even 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I see what I like to call a little bit of a drag, a little bit of a, it's, you know, there's been an evolution within the company, you know, the market has been changing a little bit. I still think there's a huge value for PMO, but I see a lot of companies or new board members, because that's also the problem. It's great, you mentioned beforehand, it's great to have an accountable executive or senior manager sponsor for PMOs.
Of course,
it would be an ideal situation. But I've noticed in a lot of global companies, senior vice presidents, who are often these people, it's like musical chairs. I mean, some of them last 6 months before they get promoted or moved somewhere else. I'm like, how can you create a certain continuity? Because a lot of the objectives that a PMO might strive for can't be achieved in a year. A roadmap is sometimes several years, right? To deliver outcome or strategy.
This value journey.
So I see a lot of companies, and my heart bleeds when I see it. I won't name any names. These are companies I know well and I love them. Big companies that are starting, and this is where the signs are. They'll start changing the name of the PMO. So I'll come and say, "Where's your PMO?" And they go, "Well, we don't have a PMO." And then I'll start asking, "What else? What do you have?" And they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "What does this and who does that?" "Oh, that's our Department of Business Excellence." Or I had one company that said, "Yeah, that's our we have a company, it's a department called OPEX." I said, "Operational expenditures?" No, operational excellence. The same thing is happening in change management. You know, just like change management used to be process engineering, process management, then process engineering, then Six Sigma, then Lean. It seems like every 5 to 10 years, we're doing the same thing. We're just calling it different, which is kind of confusing. What do you think is the reason why some PMOs struggle over a length of time to maintain not their relevance, but the perception of relevance?